Now, let me see what's coming up next. The government was defeated last week in the House of Lords. Peers amended the bill that will allow Theresa May to trigger Brexit to guarantee the rights of EU nationals currently in the UK. The government says it will remove the amendment when the bill returns to the Commons later this month. But a report today from the Commons Brexit Select Committee also calls for the government to make a unilateral decision to safeguard the rights of EU nationals living here.
If the worst happened, are we actually going to say to 3 million Europeans here who are nurses, doctors, serving us tea and coffee in restaurants, giving lectures at Leeds University, picking and processing vegetables, right, off you go? No, of course we're not going to say that. So why not end the uncertainty for them now? Because I think that will help to create the climate which will ensure that everyone gets to stay, because that's what all of us want. And that's why we've unanimously agreed this recommendation, that the government should now make a unilateral decision to say to the EU citizens who are here, contributing, working, paying tax, yes, you can stay, because we think that's the right and fair thing to do.
And we're joined now from Buckinghamshire by the Leader of the House of Commons, David Lidington. Welcome back to the programme, Mr Lidington. The House of Lords has amended the Article 50 bill to allow the unilateral acceptance of EU nationals' right to remain in the UK. Is it still the government's intention to remove that amendment in the Commons?
Yes, we've always been clear that we think this bill is very straightforward. It does nothing else except give the Prime Minister the authority that the courts insist upon to start the Article 50 process of negotiating with the other 27 EU countries. And I think on the particular issue of EU citizens here and British citizens overseas, the PM did suggest at the December European Summit last year that we do a pre-negotiation agreement on this, and that wasn't acceptable to all of the other 27 because they'd taken a view that you can't have any kind of negotiation until the Article 50 process has been triggered. Okay, that's where we are. I hope that with goodwill and rational self-interest on all sides, we can tackle this right at the start of those negotiations.
All right, well,
I hope will be underway
let me come on to
later
that.
this month.
But it's not just the Lords, is it? Because we've now got the cross-party Commons Brexit Committee saying you should now make a unilateral decision to safeguard the right of EU nationals in the UK. Even Brexiteers like Michael Gove, John Whittingdale, Peter Lilly agree. So why be so stubborn on this issue?
Because I think that this is it's a complex issue that goes beyond just rights of residents, but about things like access to healthcare, access to pension up ratings, to benefits and so on.
But you could settle the residence issue now.
Well,
you could settle that.
It's also, Andrew, because you've got to look at it from the point of view of the British citizens, well over 1 million, living elsewhere in Europe. Now, if we make a unilateral gesture, it might make us feel good for a bit, and yes, it would probably help in the short term those EU citizens who are here. But you've got those British citizens overseas who would then be potential bargaining chips in the hands of any of the 27 other governments, and we don't know who will be in office at particular stages during the negotiation, and they might decide for completely extraneous reasons to hold up agreement on the rights of British citizens. The sensible way to deal with this as 28 mature democracies is to get around the table, start the negotiations and agree on something that is fair to all sides and is reciprocal in character.
What countries do you think might take on UK nationals living in the EU? What countries are you frightened of on this issue?
The one thing that I know from my own experience in the past of being involved in European negotiations is that issues come up that maybe it's nothing to do with British nationals, but another issue that matters a huge amount to a particular government, may not be a government that's even in office yet elsewhere in the EU, and they suddenly decide, well, we can get something from the Brits out of this, so let's just hold up agreement on British citizens till the British move in the direction we want on issue X. Now, I hope it doesn't come to that. I think that the messages I've had from EU ambassadors in London and from those of my former Europe Minister colleagues around Europe I've been in touch with is that, no, we want this to be a done deal as quickly as possible. That's the British government's very clear intention. We'd hoped that we could get a reciprocal deal agreed before the Article 50 process. That was not possible.
No, I understand that, Mr. We haven't got much time, and you've said that already. So let me count. Is it really credible, even if there is no reciprocal rights deal being done, is it really credible that EU nationals already here would lose their right to live and work, of face deportation? You know that's not credible. You know that's not going to happen.
Well, we have already under our own system a rule whereby somebody who's been lawfully resident and working for five years can apply for permanent residence here. But it's not just about residence. This is about whether residence then carries with it certain rights of access to healthcare.
I understand that, but we've made this point. The point is you could guarantee them the residence now and deal with other matters later. It's the right to live and work here that worries them at the moment. And the Home Secretary has said there can be no change in their status without a vote in Parliament. Could you ever imagine the British Parliament voting to remove their rights to live and work here?
I think British Parliament will want to be very fair to EU citizens who, as Hilary Benn and others rightly say, have been overwhelmingly here working hard, paying taxes, contributing to our society, but they will equally want to make sure in the British Parliament that there is a fair deal for our own citizens, more than 1 million, elsewhere in Europe. And I don't think you can simply disentangle the issue of residence from those things that go with residence.
Is the Article 50 timetable to be triggered if the Prime Minister gets her way before the end of this month, is it threatened by these Lord's amendments?
I sincerely hope not, because the House of Lords has a perfectly respectable constitutional role to look again at bills sent up by the House of Commons, but they also have understood traditionally that as an unelected House, they have to give primacy to the elected Commons at the end of the day. And in this case, it's not just the elected Commons by an overwhelming majority that sent the bill up unamended, a majority of more than 300
so
in the
it's
Commons,
not threatened
but a referendum that lies behind that.
It's not threatened in your view?
I think not. I think we are still confident that we can get Article 50 triggered by the end of the month as the PM wants, and as Parliament has voted for.
Now, one of the other Lord's amendments that are coming up this week will be to have a meaningful vote on the Brexit deal when it's done at the end of the process. What's your view on that? What would you understand by a meaningful vote?
Well, the government's already said that there's going to be a meaningful vote at the end of the process.
What do you mean by meaningful?
That Parliament will get the opportunity to vote on the deal before it finishes the EU level process of going for consideration by the European Parliament.
But won't the choice
be?
Parliament will be given a choice, as I understand it at the moment, between either vote for the deal that you've negotiated, or we leave on WTO rules. We crash out anyway. Is that what you mean by a meaningful choice?
Well, Parliament will get the chance to vote on the deal. But I think, Andrew, you put your finger on the problem with trying to write something into the bill, because any idea that the PM's freedom to negotiate is limited, any idea that if the EU 27 were to play hardball, that somehow that means that Parliament would take fright and reverse the referendum verdict, somehow just set aside the views of the British people, that would almost guarantee that it would be much more difficult to get the sort of ambitious, mutually beneficial deal for us and for the EU 27 that we want.
But let me just get you on this. Your idea of a meaningful vote in Parliament is the choice is either vote to accept this deal or we leave anyway. That's your idea of a meaningful vote.
Well, the Article 50 process is straightforward, and I mean, it was the position of both parties in the recent Supreme Court case that the Article 50 process, once triggered, is irrevocable. So that's in the EU treaties already. But we are saying very clearly that Parliament will get that right to debate and vote. I think the problem with what some in the House of Lords are proposing, I hope it is not a majority, is that the amendments that they would seek to insert would tie the Prime Minister's hands would limit her negotiating freedom and put her in a more difficult position to negotiate on behalf of this country than should be the case.
All right. A year ago, you said it could take 6 to 8 years to agree a free trade deal with the EU. Now you think you can do it in 2. What's changed? What's changed your mind?
Oh, I was a very strong, passionate supporter of Remain during the referendum, as you know.
Right. And you thought it would take 6 to 8 years to do a trade deal?
I hope very much that we are able to conclude not just the terms of the exit deal, but the agreement that we are seeking on the long-term trade relationship, the cooperation on police and judicial policy within that time as well.
What makes you think you can now do it in 2 years when only a year ago you said it could take up to 8?
I think that there is the referendum clearly makes a big difference, and I think that there is an understanding amongst the other 27 governments now that it is in everybody's interests to sort this shared challenge out of negotiating a new relationship between the EU 27 and the United Kingdom, because European countries, those in and those who will be out of the EU, share the need to face up to massive challenges, whether from international terrorism, a truculent Russia to the east, or technological change.
All right. I mean, all that was pretty obvious a year ago, but we will see what happens. Thank you, David Lidington.